I'm making this video today for the girl at home that I know is watching this and thinking to herself, I want to change. I want better for myself. I want an elevated and upgraded life. But how on earth do I do this? How on earth do I go from where I am to where I want to be? I have the answers and I'm going to give them to you in this video. So, years ago, when I was in your position, I was deeply unsatisfied with my life. I knew I wanted it to change and I had not the foggiest idea how to get from where I was to where I wanted to be. I was always having these thoughts in the background, thinking about these types of things. And I looked around me, I looked at my friends and my family, and I realized in that moment that something had to change. The first thing I did is I quit my job. So I had a really well-paying job and I was working for a great company, but I knew that the kind of income that I wanted to be on, the kind of lifestyle that I wanted, my job was never going to get me there. So I made this really sudden decision to quit my job, and everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone thought I was nuts. Like, why would you just get up and quit your job? But that's exactly what I did. And I took a massive pay cut and started working for a sales company. Now, I went from a completely unrelated industry into sales. Now, sales does not give a damn about your ego, right? And it completely cracked me right open. And it changed the trajectory of my life, okay? So obviously I'm not telling you to get up and quit your job and go into sales, but I'm just trying to give you the background of what I experienced. So I made a sudden decision. I changed the type of industry I was working in. Now, going into sales put me into a completely different environment. I was around different personalities to the previous industry. These people were go-getters. They did not let fear hold them back. They were not necessarily all extroverted, but for the most part, they carried a confidence in their abilities, okay? So this environment that I was now in forced me to take a really objective look at myself. I lasted 6 months in this sales job, okay? I did not last very long in terms of time. But as I said earlier, it completely changed the trajectory of my life because it gave me insights about myself that I would have never otherwise come across. For example, I discovered that I was a very bad listener. So a lot of the time, I was completely misreading people and misunderstanding what they meant. Another thing that I learned was that my intuition was loud and it was clear, but I was misinterpreting even what my intuition was telling me. I was completely out of touch with myself, okay? No wonder my life wasn't where I wanted it to be. And these insights came through the difficulty of the job itself. I was required to contact very senior level executives, CEOs, people in that bracket, and discuss the problems relating to their position with them. Can you imagine going from that to that? So basically there was already a leap in where I had to see myself in order to carry conversations with people in that bracket of that caliber. So if you can try and imagine It was daily discomfort for me, like a daily discomfort. I lasted 6 months in this position and I had to leave. Okay, I could not handle the discomfort of this job anymore. However, when I left, I almost regretted it because I realized how I had transformed. I was no longer the old me. So the next step was to create and come up with the actual job that I wanted. Okay, who did I want to work for? These are questions that, like, I would never have even thought to ask myself. The old me would never have even thought to ask, okay? Because I had this, like, set idea of, like, you just go and get a job, like, try to get as high an income as you can, and you work for someone. I never realized the amount of choice that I had, the amount of agency that I carried as an individual. So this job really exposed me to my own personal agency, and I'm very, very grateful for that experience. So when I left, I had to come up with, who do I want to actually work for? Where would I be happy? And I went from being someone who would, send out CVs on platforms like Seek to finding who the boss was of a particular profession in a HR recruitment company and calling them directly and giving them my criteria that I wanted, okay? And I didn't previously view recruiters that way. I viewed them almost as the one who held the power to get me into a job that I wanted. It was the other way around now, right? I was the value. And just as I was in the process of doing this, I had a sudden epiphany, and I realized that actually, no, I didn't want to immediately jump into another job because I had this, my internal voice was telling me that I needed to go abroad, right? I needed to go on holiday. And it wasn't just I need a vacation, I'm depressed or I'm tired of life. It was this excitement that suddenly overtook me, and I was just picturing myself overseas, and it felt really good. And I was like, I'm going to follow that voice. So I left and I booked my ticket. I went overseas for 2 months. Okay. I had the best time of my life, right? Being away just really helped me to put the pressure down, really relax. You know when you're overseas, like when you're on holidays, like your only concern is how you're going to enjoy yourself the next day. And that's exactly what I did. I had an absolute ball. It also helped me. I didn't do any of this consciously, by the way. Okay, this all kind of just followed on, one from the other, because I was following my internal voice. Anyway, so it really helped me to integrate the new identity that had taken shape over the last 6 months, and it really helped them to settle and take root, right? So I was reading people on another level, like it wasn't the old me. It's like I always had this intuition, I always had the intelligence, but they weren't working together. In fact, there was something working against me internally. That's how it felt. And now it was the complete opposite. For once in my life, for the first time in my life, I felt really sovereign. Like I really felt like things came together for me internally, okay? That's the best way that I can explain it. I wasn't afraid. Like I was confident in my ability to make a correct judgment, a correct call, and to follow through. And I did this consistently in the 2 months, and I had an amazing time. It was then time to come home. I came home, not $1 in my pocket. I had spent every last cent. And on top of that, I was responsible for 2 of my siblings because they had to come back for school. And my mother, who was our primary caretaker, this was obviously like 15 years ago, she was still abroad. And so I completely lied to her and made it look like I had everything under control, and because I really wanted her to have a break and not be worried about us. And so I told her to just have a holiday and I would take care of things. But like literally, I was broke, right? So I came back and I was like suddenly just face to face with this reality that I had no money and I was responsible for my two siblings, much younger siblings. I had to pay the rent, I had to pay the bills. I had no idea how I was going to do this. I mean, I knew I needed to get a job, but I was met with a very real crisis here. So the external, as you can imagine, was very bad. And that around that time is when I first reached out to God. Okay, so when I was overseas, I suddenly became really interested in Sufism, and I absolutely fell in love with Rumi, which the whole world knows who Rumi is. If you don't know who Rumi is, please go and research Rumi, okay? I'd be mind blown if you don't know who Rumi is. Anyway, so I really just fell in love with Rumi, and it was Rumi quotes and Rumi's life, and that's when God gave me the gift of becoming consciously aware of the Isma al-Husna, which means the beautiful names of God. So around that time, I had picked up that there was a name of Allah's, of God's, which means the wealthy. So it is Ya Razak, and I was just calling out to Allah, Ya Razak, Ya Razak. Whenever I was praying, whenever I was making a dua, whenever I was in prayer, I would call out to Allah with this name. Now, the amazing thing is, when you sincerely reach out to Allah with His names, I promise you it is life-changing. It changed my life. I made a video, a very short video, which I actually want to update because I made it as one of my, like literally my first video. And I do want to update that. I want to improve the quality of it, but I'm going to do that later. But for now, I just want to say that when I started reaching out to Allah with this name, something profound happened. I don't have the words for it, but I'll do my best to explain what happened. So, as I said earlier, circumstances were not good. I was trying to keep it together so that my siblings wouldn't suffer any discomfort, so that my mum wouldn't be worried or like have her holiday interrupted because she genuinely needed a break. My parents had gone through a divorce, and there were a lot of emotional suffering had happened prior to all of this. So I wanted her to have a break. So here I was in my own private hell of like, I don't have a job and I just had the most amazing holiday, and kind of being a little bit, a little bit peeved that after such an amazing holiday, I was face to face with this. But I mean, I kind of knew it was coming. So here's the thing. I was constantly reaching to Allah with His name, Ya Razak. And now here's the thing, and this was not escapism or anything bizarre. It was like little by little, but in a very noticeable way for me, my inner atmosphere began to change. It's like a lamp had been lit inside my chest, I promise you, and I was just internally happy. And it was crazy because I shouldn't have been happy given the circumstances, but I was happy. And this motivation, apart from, the obvious motivation of like the reasons I gave you, a different kind of motivation entered my heart. And I developed this wisdom. Like, this wisdom was coming almost out of nowhere, where I could see the reason why I was going through the things I was going through. I knew it was going to elevate me. And the knowing came from calling out to Allah with this name, because we know ourselves, right? Like, especially if you carry like a bit of self-awareness, you know the types of thoughts that you think on a daily basis. You know what it feels like to be you. You know what the internal atmosphere is in you. And my internal atmosphere was different. It was unrecognizable, really, but I wasn't complaining. I had no idea. I didn't inspect at the time or analyze why this change had come about. I was just super grateful and like bubbly. I was genuinely bubbly, and I was going out there. I was motivated, creating opportunities for myself. Ideas were just buzzing in my head about how I could make money and how I could elevate my circumstances. And amazing things happened, okay? But there was one more thing that had to change, and that was my friends. And this is the sad part. I had good friends, right? But when I looked around, and I wasn't telling anybody about these things that was going on internally. This was all very private. And anyway, so I was looking around at my friends and my family, and I just realized that they had to go. Not my family, but my friends had to go, because I realized at that moment that I wanted to change. My identity had already begun the process of shifting, and I did not want to go backward. I was going forward. I was no longer tolerating the old me, the old identity. And looking around at my current friends, I was looking into mirrors that I did not want to look into. It's not that they weren't good people, but they were literally reflecting my stuckness back at me. No one was moving forward in their life. Everyone was going around in circles. And I knew in a profound way that if these friendships remained in my life, the change was going to be hard, maybe impossible for me, because they were always going to pull me back into the old identity, because those friends would not have allowed me to elevate, because they had no interest in elevating, and seeing me go up would not have made them happy about it. I don't think they would have supported it. Not because they're evil, but because people have this way of like, if they don't resonate with what you're doing and they just want the old you back, they will consciously or subconsciously do things to constantly remind you of the old you, get you into habits or behaviors that remind you of the old you. And I knew this was going to happen, so I axed them all, okay? So they were all gone. I wish them love, happiness, health in their lives, and I always have. But they were no longer going to be in my immediate circle. And when you want to move forward or elevate in your life, that is a call that you need to have the guts and the courage to make, okay, for the reasons that I've already mentioned. So bizarrely, from the outside, if you looked into my life, you would be like, okay, this girl's got no one. She literally has no friends. She doesn't socialize, right? She's not socializing, doesn't go out, doesn't go to anyone's house. No one comes over. They were all gone. I asked them all. Bizarrely, in the coming weeks and months, I ended up hearing from a company who I had interviewed with months ago, like maybe 4 months ago and 5 months ago. And this was like a Fortune 500 company. And I had honestly very little belief that I would ever get a job with them, but I had interviewed with them and I had, for unknown reasons, been rejected, right? Didn't think I'd ever hear from them again. Without me even reaching out to them, in the coming weeks, they reached out to me and they didn't even interview me for the position. they just said I got the job. Weirdest thing ever, right? Was I going to question this? Hell no. I was so happy. I was so happy to have finally gotten this role, and this was going to be life-changing for me. The income bracket was much higher than I had ever earned in my life till this point. So I was ecstatic, and I was busy. Like, I wasn't sitting around thinking about the fact that I was no longer seeing these friends, because they were not aligned with who I had become and who I was still becoming. So my life got very busy after that in the best possible way. But my external circumstances had not yet reflected or caught up to this change. But what remained with me and grew was this lamp that I talked about in my chest. It was lit, right? I just carried this joy in me for no apparent reason related to my external circumstances, okay? Because Allah puts this light in your heart. I know now. I didn't know fully then, because like I said, I wasn't analyzing the changes. I was just grateful for them, and I knew they were coming from Allah, and I stuck to it. And I did my zikr every day, and in fact I increased my zikr, so I became very interested in more of Allah's names. Like, I have to know more. So I got in there and I found out about other names like Ya Fattah, you know, the opener, and I integrated this into my I had created by complete accident a daily zikr, and I've done a video on this as well. And I did it like every single day on the way to work. And you guys, I was having the most amazing dreams, okay? My external life and my circumstances were not good, okay? Like I mentioned, I was broke when I came back from my holiday, and single parent mother, you know, 2 younger siblings. My external circumstances were not the best. But if you went inside, like my chest, I was in paradise. That's the only way I can put it to you. Like, I was happy for no reason. And this is not something that can be explained in words. It's something you literally have to experience. And it was coming from Allah. And I promise you that. My dreams, my God, my dreams. I went from being someone who, for no apparent reason, was having nightmares night after night. I thought this was normal. I thought having nightmares every night was normal. And let me tell you now, it's not normal. I know now that dreams are definitely a very important part of our psyche, and they're not for nothing. And God gives us dreams for a reason, okay? So if you're curious about your internal atmosphere and what's going on internally for you, get curious about your dreams. Don't just ignore them like me and think that having a nightmare is uncomfortable and it's giving you a shitty start to the day, but that it's probably normal. It's not. So anyway, my dreams began to, take shape and color, and this atmosphere that was so profoundly beautiful that when I would wake up in the morning, I wanted to go back to sleep. I wanted to continue my dream. And it was like this every night. I would see oceans, I would see mountains, I would see myself painting on canvases by an ocean, and beautiful, like picture Santorini, and I would see images like this, you know. I could go on, okay? I don't want anyone to think I'm, boasting about my dreams, because that's definitely not my intention. I was seeing angels in my dream, like it, next level. I was getting messages in my dreams. Would it be far-fetched to you if I said that I knew what was going to happen in the coming days, work events? other events with people I knew were going to take place because I would see things in my dreams, because that's exactly what happened. Now, this is very real, and I promise you that if you start reaching out to Allah with His names in a intentional way, and it's okay to do these things for improvements, for money, for a better life. Like, don't feel guilty about those things, because we're human beings and we are in need of Allah in every single way. Like, we wouldn't be here. We would already be in paradise, or wherever it is you go after this place. We would already be there, but we're here and we're having this experience for a reason. And God tells us to call out to Him using His name. So it is for a reason. I highly recommend it. Okay. So the main point of this video was to let you know that if you want to show up, if you want a different life, if you want life to show up differently, you need to show up differently. Okay. And that bold move that requires courage of you to do, just do it. Listen to your heart. And you may not share my beliefs. If you're watching this video and you don't share my beliefs, whatever it is that you do believe, that is a higher power, connect to it. That is the point. Because I have my values and my faith, and I connect to my Creator through His beautiful names. And if there's one message that I wanted to give to you today, it's that you seek out Allah's names, find the ones that you need, and repeat them with a count, daily, sincerely, intentionally, not with an expectation of any particular outcome, not gripping to the thing that you think you want, but trusting that Allah knows what's in your heart. And if you reach out to Him for it, it'll come to you in the most beautiful way. That way might not be what you wanted, but you'll know. You'll know that Allah answered you and it came to you in the best way possible, and you wouldn't have it any other way. I'll see you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.